This is outdated. And welcome to a new program on my channel. When I got back into role-playing games a while back, I started looking at like doing reviews and things like that, and I'm really enjoying it, right? And I'm getting back into playing and stuff, and I discovered something that didn't even know existed. And no, it apparently isn't something for my dog, so it'll stop barking at random stuff. No. The thing is, it's playing without a DM. And as somebody who is the forever GM or forever DM in games that they do, that appealed to me, right? I like that idea of being able to like just play without a DM. So now it makes me think back in the old days of those choose your own adventure novels. I read that crap out of those when I was a kid. Well, I didn't realize this until I started getting some RPGs I wanted to get into, and I purchased the Call of Cthulhu starter set for 7th edition. And I actually review this starter set on my channel if you want to check that out. And in it, an adventure that it gives you is a completely solitaire adventure called Alone Against the Flames. Alone Against the Flames, in case my dog barked over that. In it, it's like a choose your path adventure, except you create your Call of Cthulhu character as you play, and then you use their stats and all that stuff to do stuff. So it's really neat. I really enjoyed it, and it ends up they've actually made 4 of those. That they have like Alone Against the Flame, Alone Against the Frost, which I think used to be called Alone Against the Wendigo, but whatever. Alone Against the Dark and Alone Against the Tide, right? So, sorry, one of my dogs, the one that isn't an idiot, is curling up in their little bed to chill. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this like play without a DM thing, I should do my first season as an adventure where I discovered what that was like. Now, there are other systems out there that do this in a much more in your mind focused way. Iron Sworn is a great example, also something I've reviewed on the channel. I will eventually do an Iron Sworn, but I wanted to start with this because I felt like it was a good place to start. So I actually filmed this once and it messed up. And so I actually created my character already. We're going to go through the whole thing anyway, and I'll just tell you what I decided on. Okay. So let's just go ahead and share screen. And I'm going to share the text. And wait, it says hold control to select multiple windows. I'm learning as I go. And I'm going to hit share. Whoa. Okay. Now let's figure out how I'm going to do this. Let's move this over here. Boop. And let's move that over there. Okay. Now I would actually like this to be much bigger than that. So there we go. And then there we go. Now what I can do over here is I don't really need this. Can I do that? Can I just get rid of this completely? How do I do that? I wonder. It's not really giving me a clear option. It's probably something right in front of my face, and I'm just like totally missing it. We'll live with it. What is that? That's rotating. None of that's helpful. So what I'm going to do is I had this blown up when I tried it the first time. I want to get it to a size where we can actually work with it, and there we go. There. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play through Alone Against the Flames. This is the cover of the PDF version. I actually have the paper version, a completely different cover. The Adventures by Gavin Inglis. I think it's Inglis. And the cover's by Peter Stovic. I really love that cover. It's not so good for this guy, I guess, but for the rest of us, it's cool. We're going to go ahead and get into this thing. And I'm going to actually speed through part of it because I already did create the character, right? So we're going to start with Alone Against the Flames. And like I said, I kind of got inspired by several channels online that do this sort of thing. Probably the first one that really jumped out to me as like the best I'd seen was Me, Myself, and Die with Trevor Duvall. The difference between Trevor Duvall And I, Trevor Duvall, is a professional actor who's paid to do this sort of thing, and he is extremely good at what he does, right? Highly recommend it if you want a polished version of what I'm about to kind of like just regurgitate all over the internet right now. I just look like a certain actor that we're not going to name. Sorry, I see. He actually is an actor, right? So that's going to be the difference. I'm going to do the best I can here, which is another reason why I'm starting with this, because everything's right there. So it's going to be more like reading and then telling you my decisions. When I do a season like with Ironsworn, that will be more like going through my thought process. But let's go ahead and give this thing a try, shall we? So I'm going to start here, and you should be able to see it on screen with number 1. The sun is high in the sky, a merciless ball of heat. You feel scorched by the time you reach the bus halt in front of Osborne's drugstore. It's a relief to put down your heavy cases and take off your hat for a moment. You fan your face. It's been a long summer here in your hometown, and yet a curiously empty one. You look across the street at the grubby butcher's shop, the grocer's and its faded awning, and the shabby tobacconist. Mistrustful faces glare at you as they pass, eyeing your clothes and luggage. It was your parents' choice to live here, not yours. You were happy down south as a child, among Providence's white-walled houses and leafy churchyards. Perhaps this new job in Arkham will supply the change you need. Yet everybody you know in the world lives here. You know nobody in it, not one soul. You ask yourself one last time if you're doing the right thing. The answer is here. None of your supposed friends have come to see you off. You are alone. Whatever challenges lie in Arkham, it will be a new life and a brave one. A small gray motor coach approaches and rattles to a stop. You put your hat back on and pick up your cases. So we're going to go to 263. What I love about the PDF, I can just click the number and whoop, there I am. The 2 young men with sullen expressions alight from the coach. One looks you up and down before heading away. The driver also steps down, glancing at you before crossing the road to visit the tobacconist. When he returns, he is rolling a cigarette between his yellowed fingers. He gives it a final twist and examines you as he reaches for his matchbox. He is a thin man in his 50s, dressed in a stained shirt with the bus company emblem. Yet his eyes are sharp in their dark sockets. Where to? You show him your ticket for Ossipee. From there, you will connect to Rochester and Portsmouth before the coastal line to Newburyport. And finally, Arkham. You should be able to afford a rail ticket for at least some of the way. Otherwise, this will be the first of many long bus trips. The driver scratches the match and lights his cigarette. The end flares as he takes a draw. Then he exhales and gestures to the back of the coach. Luggage rack's up there. Look at your investigator sheet. At the top, you have spaces for 8 characteristics: strength, constitution, willpower, dexterity, appearance, size, intelligence, and education. Allocate the following values among them, writing in the large square beside each. And you're given an 80, a 70, 260s, 350s, and a 40, right? Basically, most of these are what you think they are: strength, constitution, dexterity, for the most part, intelligence. Those are all things you're already familiar with if you've role played before. Size is quite literal. It's how physically big you're built. Appearance is literally how attractive you are physically, although it can represent like charisma, I guess. POW is like willpower. In most role-playing games, they use something like wisdom for that, but it's specific here. And education is how well educated you are. Not the same as intelligence. It's important to note there are some really, really smart people that are completely uneducated. There are some really, really educated people that are not very intelligent. But generally speaking, the best have both, the worst have neither, right? And so it's always better to have both, I would say. So when choosing my stats, I started to think about what kind of career I wanted this character to have. And I thought, well, one thing that would probably fit in with the setting would be like a college professor. So I put education at 80, intelligence at 70, then my 60 is willpower and dexterity. Those are my 60s. My 50s were appearance, constitution, and size. My strength was 40. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to 8, and we're going to keep going. The driver smokes and watches as you drag your cases to the back of the motor coach. The rack is set inconveniently high on the vehicle. You get a grip on the heavier case. So if your size is 40, you go to 23, but if it's higher than that, you go to 38. My size was 50, I think. Yep. So I went to 38. Ooh, here we go. The driver continues to enjoy his cigarette, watching his keen interest as you struggle with the cases. You grit your teeth and heave the second one into place. Perhaps the residents of Arkham will have better manners. All I know is one day this guy's going to find out about lung cancer because they wouldn't have really had that yet. They wouldn't have realized what's going on, and that'll teach him for being such a jerk. Be the way 23 or 233. Actually, I shouldn't have said that. That was really mean. I'm a terrible person. Moving on. The driver flicks his cigarette into the gutter and steps into the motor coach. Its engine coughs into life. You board, grateful that you will be the only passenger for the initial part of your trip, at least. With mixed emotions, you watch from the window as the tired avenues of your old home slip behind you, receding into the distance. For a few minutes, you can still see the church spire over the brow of a low hill. Then the road dips in, and it too is gone. And one of my dogs is about to bark. My apologies. Arkham is your new home. You will travel there and make a new start. So you'll see 2 smaller boxes on the right of your character sheet. This is where it figures out, what I do here is I determine several stats. I do my half values for my attributes. So what if it was an 80, it's half's a 40, and then your 1/5 value. So you divide by 5, right? That's all it is. Then it also gives you sanity. Your sanity is whatever your willpower is. So for me, that was 60. And then you do your magic points, which is 1/5 of your willpower. So for me, that was 12. Okay, we're going to 134. The coach putters through the countryside. At first, the interior is stifling and your stomach lurches with every bend in the road. It's nice to know that not only do I, but also my character has motion sickness when an incompetent driver is driving. However, the driver opens his window, and by switching seats, you find a spot where the breeze hits you in the face. Oh my God, I have to do that too. You soon relax into the journey, observing the quaint little hamlets that the coach serves. A heavy-set woman boards at one settlement and gives you a polite nod. She gets off at the next one. The road rises a little, passing cornfields and orchards. The leaves are turning and the trees are alive with glorious reds and golds. You have just begun to doze when the driver takes a tight bend at speed. Okay, so here's where I have to add my size and constitution together, divided by 10, and those are my hit points. My character's hit points ended up being 10. Then I rolled my luck. Actually, I remember when I rolled it, you rolled basically 3d6 and multiply it by 5. I ended up with 61. So that's pretty good. The best I could have done was 80, and my dogs are going poop crazy now. So we did that. Now I had to roll a check against my dexterity. My dexterity was 60. So what it is I would roll, and I've got a dice roller over here on the side. I'm hoping you can see it. I roll 2 10-sided dice to get a percentage number. This is my 10 space. This is my 1 space. And I wanted to get 60 or below. Well, when I rolled it on when I first did this, I failed this roll. So I'm going to go ahead and go to where I failed at 59. A desperate yell awakens you. You feel yourself slide from the seat as the driver spins the wheel and the motor coach plunges off the road. Oh my God, it's like flashbacks from high school or in middle school when I'd have to ride the bus early on. Too late, you reach for the seat in front. You fall into the aisle and your ribs crash against the edge of the seat opposite. Breath rushes out of you. The coach stops with a thump. Your driver leaps from his seat into the road as you sprawl dizzy in the aisle. You hear a string of incendiary curses. The driver climbs back into the cab and sees you on the floor. He looks concerned and assists you back into your seat. You see what has happened now. A Fordson tractor has stopped in the road, and he had to swerve to avoid this steel obstacle. Sorry, he says. All them fields, and he has to pick the road to park. You all right? You don't think anything's broken, but you'll have a colorful bruise for the next few days. He backs the coach up a little and threads it around the tractor, glaring at the farmer. So I took 1 hit point of damage. So I went down to 9. All right. I'm going to go to 71. Whee. Here we go. You resume your journey. The driver takes the curves with more caution than before. He glances over his shoulder at you a couple of times. Sorry about that, he says. That fellow was dumber than a hog. I'm Silas. What's your name? The accident was at least as much Silas' fault as the farmer's, but it doesn't seem shrewd to antagonize the man while he is driving you through the middle of nowhere. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you the name. I'm not going to read that section. I'm basically going to say my name and age. And I chose the name Alistair Wayne. And why did I do that? I had a weird reason. If you know anything about the Batman comics, there's a place in Batman comics called Arkham Asylum where all the crazy people go. They got the name Arkham from H.P. Lovecraft and his fictional city in Massachusetts. I decided to return the favor and use the last name Wayne from the Batman comics. So, and I used Alistair because it sounds like a white male's name from the 1920s who, might not be the best human being in the world. So the coach turns onto a narrow road, which weaves uphill through woodlands. Silas becomes chatty. Oh, I also set my age to 30. Going to Arkham, eh? Can't say I ever heard of the place. Went to Boston once, didn't like it. I did too this summer. Too much hustle and bustle. I loved it there, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. You got family there? A special someone waiting? The afternoon is wearing on. You see no harm in confiding in Silas about your new life. A job, eh? What's your line? So I had to choose an occupation. This gives me 5 choices, right? And I used one of the 5 choices just to stick with it, right? But in the starter set, you actually have a few more choices than that. There's also the, when you graduate up from the starter set, you can get the Keeper's Rulebook. It has a lot more choices than that. Or you can get the Investigator's Handbook, which has a ton more choices than that. It also has simple rules, including in the starter set, to come up with your own occupation you want to do and what would logically go with that, right? Because the numbers are always the same, right? So the choices here were antiquarian, like I deal in antiques, doctor of medicine, a journalist, a private investigator, or a professor. I decided to go with a professor because I've never made one, and that really fits H.P. Lovecraft and fits like the setting. So we go to 265. You explain you are joining the faculty at the renowned Miskatonic University. It's only a junior position with teaching and tutoring duties, but the institution is well regarded. Who knows where the appointment might lead? A symposium, a visiting lectureship, even one of the world-spanning expeditions. Silas wrinkles his nose. I had enough of book learning when I was a young'un. Still, I suppose it's well enough for those who like it. Your credit rating skill is 30. No kidding. Teachers don't make crap. I ought to know I am one. All right. So I had some occupational skills I got for being a professor, library use, another language. I get to pick the language, my own language, and psychology. Then I get to pick 4 more to be part of my profession. I just cannot pick Cthulhu Mythos. You can never pick Cthulhu Mythos. We'll talk more about that at some point in the future when it matters. Then I was given an array of numbers to put on those skills. 70, 260s, 350s, and 240s, right? So real quick, what I chose to do, I chose archaeology and did that when I was my 70. I'm a professor of archaeology, right? For my 60s, I did, well, you know what? Let me do the ones that told me I had to do. How's that? So let me do that first. So the first ones I had to do were language other. I picked Latin. I gave it a 40. Language own. I picked 50 there. Library use 50. And psychology 40. The ones I chose, archaeology 70, because that's what I'm a professor of. Anthropology, because they are related fields, 50. I picked Dodge 60 as part of a backstory thing I'm kind of brewing with in my head. And I picked fighting, brawling for at 40. Wait, that's the wrong one. Sorry, my bad. Persuade at 60. That's what it was. Right. So those are the ones I chose that way. Right. So then I moved on. Where did I go? Okay, so I did all that. So now I went to 128. You realize Silas hasn't made a stop since the incident with the tractor. The motor coach winds its way uphill. However, your thoughts are interrupted as the road crests a ridge and you are treated to a magnificent view of the vista below. A creek snakes through the valley, breaking the rich autumn palette of the tree line. In the distance, the white mountains rise into hazy cloud. There's no settlement, not even a cabin, as far as the eye can see. Birds drift through the treetops, and at scroll, you can just make out what might be two white-tailed deer lingering by the water. Perhaps you're making a mistake by moving to the city. Could you survive on your own in this lush wilderness? What's that? Look, foreshadowing. Oh, anyway, you have a base ability in most skills listed in brackets after the skill name on the investigator sheet. For instance, you have 20% in climb and a base dodge equal to half of your dex, right? So what I have to do is I have to pick 4 more skills, and I can just add 20 to whatever the base is. Again, I cannot pick Cthulhu Mythos, okay? So what I did there, I chose charm. Its base is 15, so mine's 35. I chose climb. Its base is 20, so mine's 40. I chose drive auto. My base is 20, so mine's 40. And I chose fighting brawl. The base was 25, mine's 45. That's what I went with. Okay, so is that all I had to do there? Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. There we go. The motor coach rattles on through the hills, and Silas lapses into silence. The sky darkens behind you, pinks tinting the clouds as the sun descends. Finally, a welcome sight comes into view. A settlement on the crest of a hill. This doesn't look like the pictures you've seen of Ossipee. But perhaps you can persuade Silas to stop while you stretch your legs. Minutes later, a harsh stuttering from the engine interrupts your reverie. Silas frowns and rattles the gear stick. The motor coach falters in its ascent. Silas utters a curse you don't recognize and grinds his teeth, struggling at the wheel. You seem to inch up the hill until you reach the first building. Low dwellings constructed from a rough red stone. Silas wrestles the coach into a small bay off the road. He scrambles from his seat and makes for the engine compartment. So we have just broken down in the middle of the road. If my character were female, I would be worried that this was one of those situations, like, oh, darn, we're out of gas, that sort of thing. But I have no idea. So, okay, I actually do. We'll get to that later. I think this is where we're going to stop this episode. We have created our character. We're on our way to Arkham for our new life. And now we break down in the middle of nowhere at some little village-looking place. And we're going to pick up there in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed the first ever episode of, here's the title, Theater of My Mind. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one, where we continue our journey with Alistair Wayne, alone against the flames. See you next time.